Hello and welcome to Slide Review. Today we are going back to our first genitourinary lecture, the first part on our kidney lesions. And as always, if I click on the screen, we have our standard disclaimer. Any questions, comments, concerns, I'm happy to answer any of that, either through the comments here on YouTube or on Twitter. And we always have our Twitter handles below. So again, these are the lecture topics, so we're not going to go over the lecture topics. We're just going to head straight to the challenge cases. All right, so not a lot of them today. Let's just, okay, so we have 14 cases from kidney 1, and let's get started. So this case, this looks like this is our lesion, maybe something up here. Those look like gloms. We have fat, and this looks like this is probably normal renal parenchyma down here. So let's just go right for this. And at first, maybe it doesn't seem like too much. We have a lot of chronic inflammation in the background. There are some histiocytes, okay? They're kind of sprinkled throughout. And a lot of collagen deposition. We see this collagen deposition. So maybe this is something that's been here for quite a while. But still foamy macrophages. So if you remember from the lecture, now we're trying to see if we can find any Michaelis-Gutmann bodies. Because you should already be in the, is this xanthogranulomatous pyelonephritis versus malakoplakia. And I admit this is not as robust as our previous example in the lecture was, but this is still like a granulomatous process. Just wish maybe it was a little foamier. This is a little better. Okay. Just trying to, is that one? I don't think so. I don't know that that's real. Unfortunately, there's a lot of retraction artifact in this. I think it's just the staining's a little on the funny side because we see stuff like over here. And we wouldn't have like Michaelis-Gutmann bodies, just nondescript throughout the stroma. So I don't think that's real. And just more chronic inflammation. So for me, this looks more like xanthogranulomatous pyelonephritis. But that would be the differential that I would have for this case. Case 2, so it looks like pretty much it's going to be the entire thing. So we'll just go in wherever. Okay. So what's happening with this is all lesional. And what makes this tricky is that it's packed extremely tight. So it imparts like a solid appearance. Maybe this is a better area to kind of get a sense of that. But what we have are somewhat low to moderate grade nuclei. Like there is a little bit of anisonucleosis. It almost looks like they're cribriforming, but I know that's what this lesion likes to do when it's really compact. You have your thin cores coming up here. It'd be nice if we could find a good area though. Maybe, But what is this not? So this does not look like a clear cell carcinoma, clear cell renal cell carcinoma. Um, this imparts more of like a papillary feel where the papillae have just been crunched into a really small area. So they're really looking like they're back to back. But we still have these somewhat low cuboidal cells with not a lot of cytoplasm. This just looks like non-specific blood. So to me, this looks more like a really, really solid appearing um, papillary renal cell carcinoma. Again, because of the cell features. But what makes this difficult is the fact that it has this solid appearance. And unfortunately, with these cases, since they are part of a database, we don't get follow-up on them. But that is my logic with this. It is, I don't think if you were, even though we didn't go over these things, if you were thinking about, okay, is this maybe like the epithelial portion of like a Wilms tumor, where it kind of looks like you have these small round blue cells, but I think there's far too much cytoplasm for that. Again, I'm not thinking that this is some variant of clear cell. But I think this is a good case for discussion. So if anyone has other thoughts on this, I think that would be excellent. Because again, challenge cases are not designed necessarily to be easy. Some of them hopefully are. I don't want to frustrate you all so much that you stop looking at cases, but the idea just being to see more. But to me, this looks a little more papillary. All right, moving on. Case 3. Um, with this case, I'm not trying to trick you. This is skin, but this is not a derm path case. So the lesion obviously is over here within the papillary and reticular dermis. And if we go in, what we see are these somewhat polypoid cells with very clear cytoplasm. There is some nuclear irregularity. Like you can see, these nucleoli are eosinophilic, right? Not really basophilic. There is, again, some variation in nucleolar size, and we have these thin fibroseptae around these nests of clear cells. So this is a clear cell renal cell carcinoma that has metastasized to the skin. And to prove that, and not just say that they have a piece of skin that's there, you can see here's the carcinoma and here is our skin surface. Case 4, so we're back to renal. No skin in this one. And here is the lesion. This looks like this is probably normal renal parenchyma. And it has at least maybe some cystic degeneration, but let's see what it looks like. And again, kind of the same thing. So we see we have our clear cells, right? Some of them are larger, some of them are a little more pink. And again, these very delicate septae in between. So this is the sense of what your lesion looks like. And then if we go over into like the cystic areas, see if we find anything different. What we notice is the same cells, but this is a papillary projection. Okay, see if we can find anything better than that. Kind of more of it, a little more here. But this kind of feel, so this is again, yes, like a papillary protection, we have the serum on the inside, our neoplastic cells on the outside of the core. But this is not a clear cell papillary renal cell carcinoma, because if we look, we don't have liftoff, okay? Here is our fibrovascular core, and we have our nuclei are at the base. So this all falls within clear cell renal cell carcinoma with papillary architecture, okay? Um, so these can be very confusing, but if you just remember the overall features, where the nuclei are supposed to be, and having the areas that look like more conventional clear cell up here really help you. Case 5. So this looks like maybe the whole thing is lesion. This looks like maybe it looks papillary down here. This looks like we have some necrosis. But let's go in and see what we got. Okay. So this is pretty interesting. Looks like we have like a giant cell maybe. Really high grade. So what we notice is that there's a lot of variation in the nuclei. There are lots and lots of plasma cells. That's what all these guys are. And you start getting used to seeing plasma cells in lesions. Again, we have our more polypoid cells. The cytoplasm definitely does not look as clear, but remember when we go to higher grade clear cell renal cell carcinoma, they tend to pick up more eosinophilic cytoplasm. Okay, and it goes along with the higher isopnucleolar grading. This has, again, a papillary type architecture. But it'd be nice to find an area where I can really show you that this is clear cell. But you see how ugly these cells are? Like, this is really bizarre. Let me find a different area that isn't falling apart. And what I'm not liking is that some of these cells look spindly. Some of them have not quite a rhabdoid appearance, but at least we have some spindle appearance. This again is more eosinophilic. Usually you have areas, like there'll be some heterogeneity within a lesion. You can find an area that maybe is a little more conventional. And who knows, it could even be on a slide that we don't have. This looks, I don't want to say it quite yet, but oh, what the heck, I'll say it. So I think that there is some sarcomatoid change with the these spindled areas that are really high grade. This case is difficult in that there's a lot of necrosis going on. It kind of almost gives you the feeling that, hey, are we looking at like a renal medullary carcinoma? So I would definitely understand someone wanting to put that in their differential. Okay, I don't think it's really gonna play too nice with us. And maybe this one we should leave more at a differential. Like there is some clearing that would push us towards like a high grade clear cell renal cell carcinoma. Because at a minimum, if you were thinking, I kind of want to call this papillary renal cell carcinoma and have that in your differential, you would have to, this would have to be type 2, but as I pick a spot that's really not too good for showing that. But to me, this isn't really imparting that pseudostratified look that we expect with a type 2 papillary. It still looks like everything's relatively single layer, monolayer. This is a little more clear. So that's why I would still have clear cell renal cell carcinoma with papillary architecture and sarcomatoid change as my top differential, but I think it's not a bad idea at all to also consider, is this type 2 papillary renal cell carcinoma with focal clear cell change and sarcomatoid change? You could think about your medullary carcinoma. And this would be an instance where your stains would help you. All right, that's what I'm thinking for case 5. So again, we had a couple really difficult cases, I think, close together. So hopefully these next few are a little easier. This is case 6. And again, this looks like here is probably our normal renal parenchyma, and this looks like our lesion. And this looks more conventional. Again, thin fibrous septae, big clear cells. So this is just a clear cell renal cell carcinoma. There is a little bit of, is this fibrin deposition? Yeah, maybe like a scar in here. We have some fibroblasts. And you can have these blood lakes. That's not uncommon. And you can see how it's just kind of percolating through. And okay. So I think this is a little bit of renal parenchyma, but it's definitely not normal. That's okay. This has been here for a while because we have calcifications. These are not smoma bodies, they just look like regular calcs. But okay, so hopefully an easier case for everyone to go over. This is just clear cell renal cell carcinoma. All right. Case 7. So this kind of looks similar to what we saw in the previous case. This obviously is lesional, these areas. I'm not sure about these at low power. And here we have most likely a lymphocytic band, but let's just go in and see what all this stuff is. Okay, so this is lesional 2. And it looks again like we have another clear cell. This one to me doesn't look maybe like it's as well fixed. And the reason I say that is it just kind of seems like things are falling out a little bit. Maybe it is. Maybe it's just that area. Let's go. So again, our clear cells. This really just looks like it's falling apart though, where we have these discohesive cells. It's a very unusual mitotic figure. And again, we're starting to see more of that eosinophilic cytoplasm coming out that corresponds with the higher nucleolar grade in those areas. And this kind of looks more like that first area. So again, these lesions can be very large and bulky, and they can be hard to get good fixation on sometimes. When we start seeing, looks like we have tumor deposits. out here as well. Okay. So another clear cell renal cell carcinoma. You can see more of it up here. And again, so whereas larger nodular areas like this would be apparent grossly, you might not even see stuff like this on your gross examination. Okay. This is case 8, and it looks like they gave us quite a bit of renal parenchyma, and this is probably the lesion. It's either the lesion or it's necrotic, and we have this area of hemorrhage in the center, but it looks very pink, so that's why I say like either it's lesional or it's necrotic. Let's see. All right. So what we have here are, again, somewhat polygonal or epithelioid type cells, but they don't have really super well-defined margins. The cytoplasm is extremely granular, and we have this fairly fascicular or open chromatin. Um, in the lecture, I said that, even though you're not supposed to have halos, you do tend to see like these areas of halos in these lesions, but they don't have coilocytic change. So what am I thinking with this? Uh, to me, this looks like oncocytoma, but it would not be unreasonable to uh, be more descriptive and say oncocytic lesion, but uh, this kind of fits the bill for oncocytoma more than other lesions. And you'd want to add in there like some other oncocytic lesions that we didn't cover in our lecture time as well. So that would be things like maybe you want to think about like succinate dehydrogenase deficient RCC, and always consider like your hereditary lesions, but kind of it doesn't really matter where I'm going in this. I'm not really seeing mitotic activity. Everything's just very bland, very neutral. So oncocytoma. Case 9, again, normal renal parenchyma all around, and here we have this relatively well circumscribed lesion. It's very bloody, so this may actually make it more difficult or easier depending on what it is. And despite all the blood, we actually see the exact same thing that we saw in the previous case. So again, you don't have well-defined cell borders. Okay, it's kind of hard to tell where some of these cells end and the next one begins. Very granular cytoplasm. The nuclei are relatively bland. You do see nucleoli, but they're basophilic, and we are zoomed in quite high. And we have like this fibrillary background with lots of hemorrhage, so maybe this is something that uh, has been here for a while and bled into itself. I'm not seeing hemosiderin deposits, so maybe this is all recent hemorrhage. And again, when you see recent hemorrhage and no hemosiderin deposition, you want to think about things like, was this traumatic related to surgery, or was this a sudden bleed that they had to go in and perform surgery for? So, but yeah, this is another oncocytoma. This is case 10. So it looks like the entire thing is lesional. At low power, there isn't anything that's obvious. Normal renal parenchyma maybe over here. And we have this very cystic appearance to everything. It is bloody in some areas. Let's just see if we have any normal renal parenchyma. And it looks like we have a little bit. Okay, so what's important with having some normal is that that's how you compare your nuclear size to things. So immediately looking at our lesional cells, so if this is normal, these guys are lesional. They look roughly the same size. So they're not large cells, but they have, again, this ample eosinophilic cytoplasm, poorly defined margins. And what we start seeing are areas with maybe some hobnailing in these cystic areas. I admit, maybe not the best. I think that's a good hobnail. And another one. This area, it's kind of a little tangential, but hopefully you can still get that sense. And we have these solid areas in between. Let's see if we can find anything else. Because hopefully right now what you're thinking is, well, this could be chromophobe. I'm also thinking, is it tubulocystic renal carcinoma? But remember, tubulocystic renal carcinoma doesn't have these solid areas and also extremely rare. So to me, what this case looks more like, and again, this is up for debate, especially when we're talking about extremely rare entities, is, to me, I think the primary lesion is oncocytoma. However, I think the oncocytoma has features of tubulocystic carcinoma. So wording-wise, you'd probably say something like oncocytoma with tubulocystic features, or oncocytoma with focal tubulocystic differentiation, something like that. But it all looks very similar, and that's what I think we have going on here. Case 11. So if we thought the previous case didn't give us much, this looks like even less, maybe. We have lots of fat. Again, this all looks lesional. Nothing here that looks normal, and very cystic, very pink. And again, we are met with our oncocytic background. That cell's a little bigger. So hopefully at this point, everyone is happy with saying that that's oncocytic. And let's go to an area that definitely we can tell is cystic. Okay, so either of these, I guess. And again, it looks very similar to the previous case here. This is hemosiderin deposition, a little bit, looks like maybe. Yeah, because here's a macrophage, and you can see how it's just full of hemosiderin. So the macrophages come in, they're trying to clean up any bloody areas, and that's what happens. But why is it hemosiderin and not melanin? Well, hemosiderin tends to impart a little more of a golden brown coloration, which I know maybe isn't the best feature to look for. And it also usually is a more fine, like they're finer granules than melanin, which can be a little clumpier. And even here in these relatively simple areas, they still look like oncocytic cells. Maybe not so impressive with the hobnailing. I think it's still there, but it's kind of hard to tell because some of this is kind of falling apart. But to me, this looks very similar to the previous case, so I would phrase it in a similar way: oncocytoma with tubulocystic features, or oncocytoma with focal tubulocystic differentiation. I like saying features more because I feel like I'm not trying to say that this is necessarily a collision tumor. Case 12. So this looks like normal renal parenchyma, which means this must be our lesion, but at first glance, it's kind of almost looks like maybe it's all the same, but Okay, this is probably our lesion. So let's just go in and check. And we can see our glomeruli are there, tubules, everything's relatively happy looking. And this is definitely our lesional area. So hopefully you're still with me and you're not going, oh my gosh, it's another oncocytoma, because what we're seeing here is a little different. Hopefully I can find a better area. So in the lecture, we were trying to find coilocytic type cells. So this is a coilocytic type cell where it's racenoid, it's not round. We have a definite halo. We have very well-defined nuclear walls. Remember, this is where you get like that cell wall type appearance. Some of them are quite small, like this. Some of them are very large. And they have this very eosinophilic granular cytoplasm. And some of them, even if they're paler, there's none really that are totally clear. And we can definitely appreciate the higher nuclear grade, uh, higher grade appearance of everything. So what this is, based off of what we've seen here, even though really big cells there, this is a chromophobe renal cell carcinoma. Case 13. So, not entirely sure. Very cystic. Okay. I know what this one is. So we'll change that. I did decide to keep this one in. Okay, so for anyone who's looked ahead to the answer key, this is not what the answer key says. So I didn't change that, and I apologize. I will fix that. Or at least my answer key. I should phrase it that way. But this case, even though it's blurry and it's somewhat difficult to see if we can find an area. This is probably one of the better areas. So this is true hobnailing, where it looks like the rounded nail heads projecting into the lumen. Let's see if we can find any other areas. And it's hard because a lot of this slide is somewhat out of plane. Again, more hobnailing, but they're just very nondescript, low cuboidal cells. They're somewhat flattened, and again, you can imagine that they would be more flattened in these very large cystic areas because it's just stretching everything out. But this looks extremely bland, right? Again, we start seeing maybe some higher nuclear to cytoplasmic ratios. And can we see anything else? There's not a whole lot of cells to look at in this case, even though it's a big slide, because again, it's a single layer of neoplastic cells. Again, some more beautiful hobnailing where you can see it imparted in the serum, because this looks like serum. So what is this? So this is actually not a chromophobe renal cell carcinoma like the list states, and I will change that. This is a tubulocystic renal cell carcinoma. So we'll get that changed. I guess a nice comparison to case 10 and 11 where they had those oncocytic oncocytomas with tubulocystic features. This is a tubulocystic carcinoma. So as you can see, like there's no areas that are solid. Everything is cystic. Everything has that very bland epithelium with it. Okay, so that's case 13. And case 14. So this is our final case, and it all looks like it's probably lesional. Nothing looks outright like normal renal parenchyma. So we can just kind of go in wherever. And if you weren't sure about cell walls previously, this is a very nice case where you can see almost like someone took a knife and like cut out all these individual cells like puzzle pieces and put them together. We have cells that are very small, cells that are very big, some of them, very big, and maybe racinoid, coilocytic. But this to me looks definitely more like chromophobe renal cell carcinoma. Again, the higher grade nuclei. I mean, look at this one. Some of them are really impressive. And you have areas that, sure, oncocytoma, right? Maybe. But the background, the prominent feature here is this chromophobe renal cell carcinoma background. Like, look at this definite cell wall appearance. And remember, this is retraction artifact. It's just so distinct. All these beautiful halos. All right. So that's what we have for this week. And again, case 13, this is actually a tubulocystic renal cell carcinoma. So we'll get that changed and updated. And we are also going to have the updated changes to the handout. So if you had downloaded the handout previously, make sure you go back in, since we will have added in the tubulocystic renal cell carcinoma in there too. If you're still with us at this point, thanks for sticking around so long. If you have any questions, comments, topics you'd like to see, things you don't want to see anymore, please let us know. And we do try to fit things in as much as we can. If you can, we'd love for you to join us on Wednesdays at 5:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time in the US for our live Zoom unknown sessions where we go over the lecture topics. And we do tend to have quite a bit of fun, I think, as well. If you like this video, please hit like. If you aren't subscribed to us, please hit the subscribe button, share this video on social media, and we will see you next week for another slide review.